On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we're answering your mailbag questions plus highlighting Johnny Furphy and his NBA draft profile and projection.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and Inside the Thunder beat writer Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're diving into another prospect profile and projection. This time, Kansas's Johnny Furphy. Plus, we're answering your mailbag questions all on today's show, which is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $200 in bonus bets with the winning of any $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with the winning of any $5 bet by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So let's dive into Johnny Furphy as we continue on our NBA draft profile and projection series, which will not see a lapse between now through the draft, and we'll probably double up on some of these pods to get through even more players to make sure that we can kind of cover all the bases here. But looking at Johnny Furphy, 6'7", a $189 with a 6'8" wingspan, 19 years old out of Kansas. I think he's a more physical, but yet less reliable shot than Grady Dick, which might not be the best combination, but we're going to peel back the layers here. So I think that Grady Dick can make an instant impact offensively as a complementary player. I think he makes the right reads and does everything right in terms of relocating and filling space on the perimeter, cutting behind off-ball defense, and attacking closeouts. Plus, in transition, he runs the floor properly. He doesn't fall in love with just floating to that three-point line, even in transition. He's able to fill the lanes and make sure that he puts his team in the best spot to go get a bucket. So I think that with Johnny Furphy, you're going to get an instant offensive player. So when you look at him, obviously, the unguarded catch and shoot stuff is great. I think that will pop even more at the NBA level as he's around better players. This was not a very good Kansas team this season. But what encourages you about Johnny Furphy is the fact that he can attack closeouts and that he can cut to the basket off ball. So when he gets the ball in his hands, he can attack closeouts, he can either score inside the arc, or he can dump it off and redirect the ball to the next advantage. Scoring inside the arc will be huge for him. And when he cuts, you got to love his hands. He uses up and understands how to use every part of his frame. So maybe that wingspan is scaring you a little bit, 6'7" with a 6'8" wingspan. Obviously, you would like to see more, from a forward in the modern NBA. But he catches the ball high every time. He's able to play a little bigger than he is. So I think that offensively, there's not much there. A very, very, very pure jump shot that maybe needs some minor polishing, if anything. There's some parts where his feet can have an inconsistent finish, and that you might want to clean that up. But overall, I think that his jump shot production, which was still good, it's 36% on catch and shoot, but unguarded it was even higher. 74% at the rim. It's 35% overall from three. It's still good, but I think that with NBA spacing, because of course it's different than college, with NBA spacing and with the ability to have a less attention demanding role, you put him, say, on the Thunder, right? He's instantly going to be at best the fourth guy you pay attention to. And that in and of itself will allow him to get better looks, which, to his credit, he's been able to knock down open jumpers with consistency and with ease. So he's a guy that if you work to get him an open shot, you're not going to be disappointed. You're not going to ever really feel like it could be a wasted possession. And then with that aggressiveness, with using his frame, he's willing to mix it up both at the rim, putting a body on guys to finish, on the glass to get rebounds, or walling up at the rim defensively and staying in front of guys. He has a very high motor. I think that he just has an overall understanding of how to navigate not being the best athlete on the floor. So like whenever he's cutting, there's no wasted movements. He's very savvy. He's using his shoulders to seal off defenders to get to the basket. Right? He's doing all that to counteract the fact that he can't just simply out athlete you to the rim. He's taking good angles defensively to cut off drivers and funnel them into a better defender. He has really good hands, both catching the basketball, active hands on defense. He's willing to compete. Like these are all things that are really good for Johnny Furphy. Now, the weaknesses for Johnny Furphy, I don't think that he's athletic enough to be a high-end defender in the NBA. Like I don't think that there's anything you can really do to fix that. I think that he's always going to be one of your worst defenders on the floor. But understanding how to fight over screens, how to rotate, that helps him in that off-ball role to make him be able to stay on the floor even as one of your worst defenders. But whenever he gets switched into isolation, he will, I think, get cooked. I don't love his ability long-term to create his own shot. I think that he'll mainly be a play finisher at the NBA level. And whenever you kind of look at Johnny Furphy, the weakness could be that despite his age, right? Like you look at him, he's 6'7", 6'8", wingspan, 19 years old from Kansas. And you look at 19 years old and you might say like, oh, he must have upside. He's only a freshman. Like I don't think that these things lead itself to upside. I don't think that not being able to defend and not being able to create your own shot would inherently give you upside just because you're young. So I think that he kind of is what he is as like this play finishing weapon. And that's still going to be someone who you need on your roster who can complete a rotation, but it's not going to be somebody who you take at 12, for example. So he averages 9 points a game, 5 rebounds a game, an assist per game, 35% from 3, 1.2 stocks from Melbourne. Synergy, 1.3 points per possession as a spot-up shooter, 1.29 points per possession in transition, 1.4 points per possession as a cutter, and then 1 point per possession as a pick-and-roll ball handler. 36% as a catch-and-shoot shooter, 70% at the rim. Here's where he's mocked at. The Ringer has him at 24. ESPN has him at 18. The Athletic has him at 18. Bleacher Report has him at 28. CBS has him at 21. Draft Digest has him at 21. Tankathon has him at 22. Mavs Draft has him at 32. The ceiling and floor, I think that his floor is Doug McDermott, and the ceiling is like a non-defensive Cam Johnson, which again, like it's not awe-inspiring, and this would not be a option for you at number 12, but it'd still be a talented player kind of in this in this system and in the modern NBA. So we'll talk about that. What could be his future role in the NBA, plus your mailbag questions all coming up. But first, once here right now, but our good friends over at FanDuel, check out FanDuel today. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with the winning of any $5 bet. That's $200 to use every time on your bonus bet if you win a $5 bet first. So you can use that $200 on player props, over-unders, the spread, future bets by going to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started and get your big winner and add that to your summer bucket list. Right now, the NBA Finals have just concluded, but at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, there's still always things to be doing. Of course, you can bet on Major League Baseball, but you can also, if maybe you're only into the NBA, that's the only thing that you want to look at, you can already bet on next year's NBA champions. The Oklahoma City Thunder are tied for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th best odds. Well, they're tied for the 5th best odds with Milwaukee. So the Milwaukee Bucks and OKC Thunder have the 5th best odds at winning the NBA Finals. You can also vote and place your bets on who you think will win the MVP award for next NBA season with SGA at plus 550. If you want something a little bit closer, you can bet on the NBA draft. Who you think will go number 1? Alex Sarr, the current favorite, minus 135. You can even bet on where you think Bronny James will go in which case the Thunder are plus 2,800. So check it out today at FanDuel.com/lockdown. That's FanDuel.com/lockdown to get started today. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Every single morning, every single day, we're here for you talking Thunder basketball. If you're sick and tired of watching Fox Sports and ESPN all day as you have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you every day with the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Let's continue to wrap up Johnny Furphy here. His future role would be, a swing closer. Like, there's going to be moments where you would need a player of his ilk who can play off-ball defense and jump the passing lanes and help you out there just a tad, but the real value comes with what he can do for your offense, spreading the floor and capitalizing on buckets. Maybe you need to come back, or maybe you're in a shootout, whatever. There'll be moments where he needs to close in games. Rotational fit this season, if he was drafted by the Thunder, he'd play 10 to 12 minutes due to his value as a shooter in a few stints. He'll play with the blue as well. Like, he'll usually get those 10-ish minutes or less, come in, be someone to help the bench unit score and try to limit those scoring lulls. But he'd also work a lot with the blue, where like you would send him down there to work defensively with a very good defensive coaching staff. You would send him down there to see how he can progress with the ball in his hands and just kind of let him develop a little bit in the blue, or see if there's anything to develop at 19 years old. Roster impact, if you traded back and got Furphy, or you went and got Furphy, and traded back into the first round, however you ended up with Furphy, I don't think it'll be at 12. However you ended up with Furphy, it would end the Lindy Waters stuff, right? Like the whole bringing Lindy in, taking Lindy out, the Lindy Waters hokey pokey would end because he would then take that spot of like, if you need a guy at the end of quarters, you need a guy at the end of halves to go chunk up a three with a few seconds left, you'd lean on Johnny Furphy. You need a guy to go help the blue develop, you'd go with Johnny Furphy. Like, he would do all of the role that you would kind of really rely on Lindy Waters, and you wouldn't want two of these limited shooters on your roster taking up spots, I wouldn't imagine. So why the Thunder should take him, if they trade back and pick up additional assets, or if they trade into the first round at the end, he has the tools to be a valuable contributor, both a contributor this season, but also an even better contributor in future seasons. You think of how many times throughout Thunder history have you longed for a guy like Doug McDermott, or like Luke Kennard, or like any of these other shooters. On the surface right now, 10 days before the draft, it does not feel like this is, after what we've built him as like a viable pick. But when push comes to shove, these are the kind of guys that help you get over the hump. And so, like, if you traded back and got assets or traded into the first round, you'd be getting a contributor, which is really good. Why the Thunder shouldn't take him is if they just stay put at 12. Like, there's no anti-Johnny Furphy business here. Like, there's nothing you can really be upset about with a Johnny Furphy pick unless it's at 12. Like, you just cannot pick him at 12. Other than that, it'll come down to if the Thunder end up getting a pick later on. Let's dive into your mailbag questions. So at Sarah Rebuild says, how many potential players work out for the team in the offseason? I've never known if it's a few select players or they try to see as many as they possibly can. So the Thunder do not release their NBA pre-draft workouts. The ones that we know about happen from a combination of some players post them to social media. Agents will tell you sometimes you'll be able to put that out. We should have one coming on Saturday. Like, that's where you find out the Thunder draft workouts. That's how we found out about Jonathan Mongbo, a few weeks ago. And so whenever you look at the list of like, this team worked out this many players and this team worked out that many players, the Thunders will typically be on the low side, but don't get that confused with anything other than the Thunder just do not say who they've worked out with, because other teams just tell you every single player they've ever worked out with, they tell you. The Thunder don't do that. They keep their cards closer to the vest, which I think is smart organizationally, but sometimes it'll throw off these lists where it looks like the Thunder have only worked out X amount of players. I can promise you the Thunder have worked out dang near everybody, because this is the last opportunity. Even if you can't, even if there's no feasible way to go get somebody in the draft, or you don't imagine somebody would be a pro prospect at the end of the day, this is your last chance to talk to them, form a touch point with them, form a connection with them, to get info on them for down the line. Like you bring them in for a workout, and then once they're drafted or once they're on a new team, you're no longer legally allowed to talk to them. But one day, especially in this era of player movement, like one day, they're going to become available, whether it's free agency, whether it's on the trade market, whatever, and you're going to want to know something about them, or like have some sort of background on them. So the Thunder will bring in and work out everybody, like every single player you can think of. I promise you they've brought them in and worked them out. It's just that since they don't, self-report these things, we oftentimes don't know about them unless the player does it themselves, or the agent is fine with you letting it out. So I know the Thunder have worked out way more people than what is on the workout tracker at SI, but that's kind of how it works. There's no real limit. You can work out as many people as you want, and you want as many people to come in as possible. M.M. Crosley says, in a perfect world where egos and human nature weren't things, would you consider starting Wallace and have Dort come off the bench? No. Here's the thing. We can go back and forth on Dort and chemistry and everything else. My biggest thing is Lou Dort is still a better defender than Casey Wallace is right now. But that's not even the real concern. The concern would be if you start Casey Wallace above Lou Dort, you then have Shea, Kaysen, J-Dub, Chet, all on the floor together. Now, who's left in the secondary unit to help the Thunder score the basketball? And they staggered Chet and J-Dub. They staggered Chet and Shea, and that's the way that they kind of cook it to where there's usually always one of those guys on the floor. But what Kaysen's value is that like he comes in off the bench and he not only gives you not a significant drop off from Lou Dort defensively, like there's not a significant drop off from Lou Dort defensively, but there's a massive upgrade from Lou Dort offensively. Like not only can he play finish better than Lou Dort, he can initiate better than Lou Dort, he can play off the catch better than Lou Dort. Like he does everything offensively better than Lou Dort. And there's not a ton of defensive drop off. Where do you need that offensive injection? The bench unit would really take a hit if you were relying on that to come from Lou Dort. So I would not change those two aspects of things if I was OKC. Vandalishvi, oh goodness, I'm sorry, says we should keep Giddey on the team for now. I don't think his market value for him in the next 5 years will be less than it is right now. He will get his minutes from the bench. Doesn't quite fit the style of play, but you have to let him prove himself in order to get good compensation. So I don't know that that's true. I think that we don't oftentimes give these front offices enough credit. We hold on to this idea of trade value of what we see, but there's so much more that goes into it. Like these front offices have every piece of film imaginable. Like Synergy is great. It has all the film as well. It's a pleasure to go watch it. But like these front offices, they're smart enough to know what's going on. Like the selling point for trading Josh Giddey, whenever you go to the discussion table, is going to be, hey, we misused him. Like, hey, we didn't put him in the best position. That's why he didn't look great. It's not his fault. It's our fault. In your system with your roster where he can be on the ball, he's going to look so much better. And that's the selling point no matter what happens like in the future. Like that's always going to be Josh Giddey's selling point, is that on the ball, he looks a lot better. And the Thunder, even putting him on the bench, as we mentioned with the staggering of J-Dub and Shea, there's still not a ton of pathways to allow him to play his style of basketball. And so I think that, when you talk about trading him in his trade value, yes, on paper it's down because he just had his worst NBA career, like his worst NBA season, in terms of, getting played for the floor in the playoffs and in terms of, how it just looked at his worst NBA season. But by the same token, Will Dawkins in Washington, who was a part of the drafting of Josh Giddey, just as one example. Like, he can see through that. He can see that, like, yeah, well, we never envisioned Josh Giddey to be an off-ball corner three-point shooter that played defense. Like, that was never, ever, ever going to ever be a part of his game. Even if he became the best possible basketball player he could become, that was never going to be what he did. So, like, they're not going to hold that against him as much as you would think. And even if in this utopic world where Josh Giddey comes off the bench next season for the Thunder and recoups trade value, quote unquote, because he's playing better. Well, guess what deflates that trade value? The fact that now there's only half a season left of basketball under club control. If you don't believe that the Thunder will extend him this summer, they would then be trading him, if they did trade him, with half a year of club control, which is going to tank your value in and of itself, no matter how good of a player you are. You always get more the more club control that a team has of the player they're trading for. You would also be still pitching to the team, hey, he'll look even better for you, but now you only have a half of a year to integrate him into your team and to really test that theory. Because even coming off the bench, he still would not play the perfect role for himself. So I don't really believe that, like, the trade value is so low right now, you'll never get anything back for him, because no matter when you decide to trade him, if you do decide to trade him, you'll be pitching teams on what you can't see. And most of the time, front offices are smart enough to see through it. John Hamm brought up a good point on the Dream Team pod yesterday, whenever me and him and Brandon were answering mailbag questions, and the same sort of thing was brought up. And he mentioned that, the Sabonis to Indiana trade, where you got Paul George. Like, the big thing was, like, on surface level, it was like, you give up Paul George for Domantas Sabonis and Victor Oladipo, but they saw through, like, Sabonis was not being used properly at all, and, like, he then became Domantas Sabonis and led to not only fun times in Indy, but also led to Therese Halliburton, who's been great. So, like, teams can see through this kind of stuff fairly regularly, fairly easily. Kent Nicholson asks, Jerice Walker, could the Thunder get him? Good ad? ? I would absolutely think that Indiana at some point has to move on from this logjam of power forward. Now, how they clean that up, whether it's moving on from Jalen Smith, whether it's moving on from Obi Toppin, whether it's moving on from Jerice Walker, whatever they decide in that category, I have no idea. But I would imagine that, like, something has to give there. And goodness, if you go back and listen to last year's NBA draft coverage and NBA draft profiles, just go back and listen to Jerice Walker's NBA draft profile. He is the perfect player for the Oklahoma City Thunder. The perfect player. And I would do a lot of things to get Jerice Walker in Oklahoma City, should the Pacers be willing to move on. Coming up, we'll answer more of your mailbag questions on the other side. But first, what's here right now? But our friends over at eBay Motors. Check out eBay Motors today, because they understand that passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships. It's also what gives you your ride or die and keep it alive at eBay Motors for everything you need to maintain your vehicle or level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for with the eBay Guaranteed Fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, the first time, your money back, because with eBay Motors, you'll be burning rubber, not cash, with all of the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the win. Keep your ride or die alive today at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, available to U.S. customers only. Check it out today at eBay Motors. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. We'll continue on answering questions. Another one from Kent is Hartenstein a fit for the Thunder offensively? I think that he fits the Thunder in an interesting role. It would have to be, of course, a short-term contract, all that financial stuff. He doesn't space the floor at all as a jump shooter, which limits you in the 5-out. He does provide spacing as a roller in a unique way, of like, his passing is really, really, really top notch for his position. He's a really good passer. He's a really good vertical lob threat and finisher at the rim, to where he could be a safety net for your guards. It would be an interesting tool to have in your toolbox of, like, he wouldn't start. He'd have to be willing to come off the bench and play limited minutes next to Chet, like, because they've only ran their double big lineup 2% of the time. It'd be interesting. I don't know that he'd agree to, one, come to Oklahoma City, two, come to Oklahoma City to come off the bench, and then go from there. But it'd be fun. It'd be a very fun fit. I like Hartenstein a lot, but he'd have to be willing to do all those things. LRB Witchery. I don't expect a full draft profile, but can you at least talk about Carlton Carrington's potential fit in OKC? Good news, LRB. You will get a full draft profile on Mr. Bub. I like Bub. I think that would be a unique blend of high upside with gonna be a contributor. So, like, that would be a unique swing. I would say with Bub, should they draft Bub, I would really like to see at that point them go get an NBA player, in free agency and trades, whatever. Like, bolster your roster with an NBA player, because then that pick makes all the sense in the world. Because, like, you think about last year's rotation, and, like, it even got at Case Wallace. Like, Case Wallace was so good as a rookie, but you did not get to explore his upside as an on-ball player, like as a playmaker. So if this rotation is in any way improved with an NBA proven player, the number 12 overall pick can afford to get a longer leash of development, both with the blue and trying to work out his upside with the blue, and then in his NBA minutes. So, like, I would be curious to see how they kind of supplement a pick like that who has such an immense upside, and that they will not be reckless in that. Like, if they draft a guy with such a high upside, they will look to maximize it in every way possible, which I think would include, opportunities with the blue to do things that you just cannot do with the Thunder on a 57-win team. OKC Thunder _BR Hoops. If the Thunder could draft any player from this draft, who would you draft? Alex Sarr is like the best player in the draft. Him and Ron Holland are my 2, 1 and 2. Alex Sarr next to Chet would be pretty fun to think about. It'd do a lot of fun for our summer hypotheticals. So I would guess Alex Sarr. Thunder topics. Who is your NBA player comp? Want to hear a few of the other beat writers' player comps as well. My NBA player comp is Brandon Bass. Let me think here. Joel Lorenzi's, who's a friend of the show's player comp, would be, imagine if Draymond Green was like 6'1", 6 foot, but he was still Draymond Green. That's Joel Lorenzi. Michael Martin, friend of the show. Man, Michael Martin kind of plays like a cross between Jason Tatum. That's not going to sit well with Michael. He's not a big Jason Tatum fan. And Jason Tatum-esque game. He's one of the best players out there. I mean, he is the best player out there. So give him credit there. Brandon Rabar has also been on the show. Steph Curry, easy. Like, oh my goodness, this guy can shoot the lights out. I'm trying to think. Daniel Bell, he has a little Dirk fade in him, which is fun to watch him break out. Imagine Dirk in the post, like prime Dirk in the post, but 2017 Dirk everywhere else. That's what you should imagine for Daniel Bell. I can go into further and other examples if you want, but those are some off the top of my head. Appreciate the kind words, Thunder topics. He says, what's the next step for Shai's evolution? Shooting more threes and from further seems like a natural progression. I actually think his next evolution is going to be his playmaking and his passing. Like he's got to become a pick and roll maestro with the ball in his hands, at finding Chet early and often and being able to maximize the attention that he is put onto him. Like you see the way that guys like Luka and them can just spin the ball out of traps and out of blitzes and really get their offense into a unique advantage. Being able to do that with the ball in his hands will be massive for Shai. Also, if he became a better 3-point shooter, that'd help as well. But I think that can be a huge role. Caleb Jones says, what's your favorite Impractical Jokers episode, and what role would Carrington have on this team? There's an episode of Impractical Jokers where one of the guys, I think his name is Sal, brings his daughter to a baseball game and is like a real mean person to her at the game, and all the parents are kind of stunned about it. Like, that was really funny. What role would Carrington have on this team? I think that he would play similar to year one Oos, probably, with a chance, just like Oos had. Like Oos's first year, he was given a chance to crack into the NBA rotation, while also understanding hey, you're gonna be blended back into the G League because we want you to work on some higher level things that you just aren't going to get the chance to do at the NBA level. I think that would kind of be what Bub would do in OKC. The Donnie G, how realistic do you see any of the expensive proposed 2-year deals being? I think that the Thunder will be aggressive this summer, but it comes down to history shows us that so far nobody wants to sign Oklahoma City. I don't think it'll be from a lack of trying, though. I think the Thunder will try to use that advantage that they have, this unique opportunity that they have. I think they'll try to use it. They can't force guys to sign, though. They can't force guys to accept those terms. At Mega_TIV, the narrative about all the Thunder picks is that they will be used in some way via trade for a star, so sheer numbers will decrease. What if Sam Presti flips them for future picks again and again, and then like currency, the bank won't really go empty? I think that's the plan. I think that the plan is to continuously have a flexibility about you to go maybe capitalize on a big trade if something presents itself. But more importantly, you have 3 stars in house. Everyone who's listening to the show right now in the year of our Lord 2024 on June 18th, you watch the Thunder play. You're a basketball sicko. You've seen this Thunder team. These 3 guys are going to be stars. It might be a hot take to national observers who don't watch the Thunder. These 3 guys are going to be stars. You already have 1 star, a bona fide superstar in SGA. The other 2 are not going to be far behind him, in terms of elevating to superstar status or at least star status and all-star status. So you've gotten that part. What you're going to need is to use these draft picks and make sure you hit on these draft picks of getting cost-controlled talent to supplement the amount you're going to be paying those 3 guys of Chet, J-Dub, and Shai. And even for as great as Sam Presti is, he's not batting 1,000 in the draft, and nobody is. So, you're right. People do view all these draft picks as they're going to be for a star. But in reality, you're going to need this many chances to make sure you continue to flush out your rotation with cost-controlled talent. So I would more so lean that way of they continuously restock the pile of picks and use them in subtle ways, like grabbing a Casey Wallace. That was a trade where you brought on Davis Bertans, use some of your salary cap to do that, to go get a guy you for sure liked and for sure thought would be a long-term fit in your rotation. Those kind of things will happen more and more. And then the last one from Ben Elyard. In what world could you see Steven Adams coming back to OKC as a vet guy, muscle rebounding defender? None. I just don't think that Steven Adams is that particularly good anymore with where the Thunder are at stylistically. I don't think that he fits this style. I don't think that he's at a point in his career where he'd want to play a role where I'd assume he'd be playing in OKC. I would assume that if you did bring him in OKC, his role would be, hey, you don't fit our style at all, but as we saw in the playoffs, you always want to be able to change some things and to be able to have a tool in your toolbox to go junk up a game. That would be your break glass in case of emergency. Hey, here's our curveball. How you doing, Uncle Charlie type of move. I don't think he's there yet. And so I also don't think that would be your only course of action to get one of those kind of guys. I don't know. I'm not as enthralled with bringing in Steven Adams as a lot of you are. Until tomorrow, folks, I appreciate you all listening. We'll do another NBA draft profile and projection and talk about some news that's breaking around the NBA as the offseason kicks off, following Al Horford and Svi Mikhailuk winning Boston their 18th championship. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.